A respectful man walks into a luxury car showroom only to be targeted, insulted, and nearly removed just because hadn't looked the part, but what they don't know is the man they tried to embarrass actually owned the building they were standing in. This is a story about power perception, and the moment silence speaks louder than rage. "Stay with us, the tone's worth more than your life," the man said, just loud enough for people nearby to hear. His friends laugh and bend their champagne glasses. Jallen didn't flinch. He stood quietly near the velvet rope, hands in his pockets, just admiring the smooth gray coat of Thurles Royce. He hadn't touched it, hadn't even crossed the line, but in fatment, surrounded by millionaires in suits and watches, his presence alone felt like a challenge to someone who couldn't handle it. Have you ever been in this kind of situation, or ever seen someone get hated, not for what they did, but just for staying calm when they were being disrespected? Let us hear it in the comments, and don't forget to tell us where you're watching from. Let's rewind. Jallen Barnes walked into Sterling Auto with one thing in mind: reliability. Nothing flashy, nothing new, just a dependable used car to replace his worn down Civic that had finally quit on him last week. He camelone gray hoodie, clean jeans, and a manila folder tucked under his arm. The dealership had good reviews. He'd found a decent 2013 Corolla online, all red, IPR approved for financing. All he needed was to sign the paperwork and leave. As he stepped onto the polished tile floor, something caught his eye. On the upper end of the showroom, behind velvet ropes and branded signs, sat a collection of machines that didn't even look street legal: a bright orange Lamborghini Urus, a midnight black Rolls-Royce Ghost, an Ath Center like a jewel in a crown of silver, Bugatti Chiron, its engine softly growling as they prepped it for display. Above them, the sign read, "Sterling Elite Ultra Luxury Line One-Day Showcase." Jallen paused, not long, just enough to appreciate the craft, the engineering. Hadn't take out his phone, didn't ask questions. He just stood there for a moment, soaking it in. And that's when Hewitt and the doors slid open, and in came a man who looked like money had raised him since birth. Blue blazer tailored to the inch, gold cufflinks, lick back hair, and loafers with soles that had never touched gravel. His name was Chadwick. You didn't need to be told. It was written all over his posture. Hewitt, and like the room was his, like the velvet ropes were put there to keep everyone else out. Two friends flanked him, both grinning and smug, champagne already in hand. They were here for the launch party, by invitation only. And then Chadwick saw Jallen. His grin twitched best. Jallen wasn't wearing a Rolex. Hewitt standing with a salesperson. Hewitt sipping champagne. He was just there, keep dreaming. Brother, Chadwick called out, stepping closer loud enough for the nearby staff to hear. They don't offer lay away on Bugattis. Jallen turned slightly, gave him a polite smile. "Maybe not today," he said quietly, "but one day." And just like that, he turned and walked away. He didn't fire back, didn't try to prove anything. He just went back to the front desk where the salesperson Derek was prepping his financing paperwork. But that simple calm, that grace, that's what pissed Chadwick off the most. He stood there, blinking, the smirk gone from his face. His friends didn't laugh this time, because Jallen hadn't given him what he wanted, and some people, they can't handle not being feared. Chadwick stared after Jallen like he was studying a problem hadn't know how to solve, and that's when switch flipped. He didn't want Jallen gone because he touched anything he wanted him gone because he didn't crawl. Leaned over to one of the nearby employees, motioned subtly toward Jallen. "You might want to watch that one," he muttered. "Been circling those cars a little too long." The employee hesitated but nodded, and Chadwick, he stood back sipping his drink, watching with a grin that didn't reach his eyes. Chadwick didn't move from his spot near the velvet rope. He just stood there watching Jallen like he was a problem that needed solving. Jallen, on the other hand, was calmly reviewing paperwork with Direct, the junior salesman. He wasn't whispering, wasn't side-eyeing the luxury car Sonomore. He was just focused, answering questions, handing over documents, signing page by page. But to Chadwick, that still wasn't enough. He leaned against that champagne bar, nodded toward Jallen again, and muttered to one of the showroom employees walking past, "Seriously, y'all just letting anybody wander around in here? Now I thought this was a luxury launch, not a free-for-all." The employee, young and clearly nervous, offered a tight Smile but didn't say much. That's when Chadwick raised his hand and waved over the front desk. "Can you get the manager out here, please?" he said loudly enough for others to hear. The receptionist looked startled but picked up the phone anyway. Jallen heard that sodded Derek, but Jallen didn't even turn around. He just kept signing. Have you ever been in a room where people didn't like you, not because of who you were, but because of how calm you stayed when they tried to make you break? Let me know in the comments and tell us where you were watching from. The manager came out moments later, walking fast and looking around like someone had tripped a silent alarm. His name tag read Mr. Rohr Generalmanager. Trim haircut, pressed white shirt cufflinks, the kind of man who always smiled with his teeth, but never with high size. Chadwick wasted no time. "Glad you're here," he said, motioning to Jallen with his glass. "That guy's been hovering around the display cars. Gave him and my guys a weird vibe. I don't know what his deal is, but it's making guests uncomfortable." Mr. Rohr followed his gaze toward Jallen. No questions, no fact-checking, just a quick nod, then a straight walk toward the front desk toward Derek and Jallen. Derek straightened up. "Hey, Mr. Rohr," he said, trying to sound upbeat. "We're just wrapping up the financing on a column, and if I have a quick word with your customer." "Mr. Rohr said, not breaking eye contact with Jallen. Jallen turned it slow and steady. He looked Mr. Rohr dead in the face. "Is there a problem?" Mr. Thier offered a smile. "Not necessarily, just wanted to remind all our guests that today's luxury showcase is for high-tier clients only. We're asking everyone to remain in their designated browsing areas." Derek shifted awkwardly. "He's not browsing though, he's just buying a used car." But Mr. Rohr kept going. "There was airport that you were lingering around the VIP display section. We just want to ensure everyone here feels safe and respected." Jallen raised an eyebrow. Safehi glanced toward Chadwick, who was no pretending not to listen despite facing them directly. "I didn't cross any limits." He looked at a few cars, then came here to finish my paperwork. "And I'm sure that's true," Mr. Rohr said quickly, "but we just need to be proactive, you understand?" Jallen held his gaze for a second longer, then nodded once. "You understand exactly what this is." Hesed, he didn't raise his voice to Dark, didn't play into it. He just turned it back toward Derek and asked, "Can we keep going?" Derek nodded and continued slower, now his hands a little shaky. Mr. Rohr stayed where he was for a beat, then walked away, but his tone lingered in the air. Chadwick hesmalled. Again, he'd gotten what he wanted. Attention, suspicion, control, but something about Jallen still unsettled him, because even after being singled out, after being approached like a threat in the middle of a luxury showroom, Jallen still hadn't broken. "What would you do if Somione reported you just for existing in a room they didn't think you deserved to be in? Would you fight it or stay calm and let the world show its face?" Chadwick was getting irritated. He'd done everything he could debate. Jallen mocked him, reported him, watched the manager confront him, but somehow none of it rattled him. Jallen was still there, still sitting, still calm. That that's what made Chadwick lose highs across the showroom. The luxury launch was in full swing. Glasses clinked, shutters clicked, laughter echoed under the vaulted ceilings as executives shoot off Lamborghinis like they were atrophies. Jallen, meanwhile, sat across from Derek at a side desk, double-checking the loan paperwork. His ID sat neatly beside the documents. He was just waiting for a printout, but Felix, they were starting to come. Other guests had begun to notice the tension at the luxury buyers, but in place, receptions, porters, interns, people watched Chadwick pace the floor and glare like he owned the place. Derek leaned in. "Hey, you okay?" Jallen gave a short nod. "They don't want me here," Hesed quietly, "but I'm not going anywhere." Have you ever felt at that moment where the whole room shifts, not because of what you did, but because of what someone else believes about you? Tell me in the comments and let us know where you are watching from. Chadwick wasn't done. He walked back toward the Velvetrope, set his drink down, and waited until a few eyes were on him. Then he made his move loud enough for the staff nearby to hear. "Hey, who's in charge of security?" he called out, "because I just saw that guy touch the rolls." Rohr, the manager, came hurrying out of his office. "What happened? That guy Chadwick said, pointing across the floor at Jallen. He saw him leaning over the rope. Hessians were all over the hood, I'm telling you. He's casing the place, probably trying to get fingerprints. Off. Derek stood up halfway from his chair. That's not true. He said quickly, he hasn't even gotten up. He's been sitting with me through whole time, but Mr. Rohr hesitated because Chadwick was loud and wealthy and dressed like someone whose complaints mattered. Mr. Rohr turned and looked straight at Jallen. Is that true? Wait, ask and tell us where you are watching from in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe for more stories like this. Jallen didn't move, didn't stand, didn't let. Yes, I've been sitting here. Few whole time. Ask your cameras. Chadwick scoffed. Or maybe the cameras just misset at people like that know how to move when no one's looking. The room went quiet, too quiet. Derek looked like he wanted to crawl under the table. A family employee near the coffee bar whispered, did he really just say that? Mr. Rohr's jaw tensed. We're going to need to pause at this sale for a moment. He told Derek, I'll have someone review the footage. Jallen let out the faintest breath. You can pause it if you want, he said. Beauty, I'm not going to defend myself against Allie just because someone rich said it loud enough. Chadwick crossed his arms. Funny how that works, isn't it? You show up in a hoodie, wander around $1 million cars, and expect people not to ask questions. Jallen turned toward him slowly. I didn't ask you anything. I didn't speak to you, and I didn't touch your car, Mr. Rohr raised his hand. Gentlemen, please, let's not escalate. We'll have someone verify everything shortly, but by then the damage was done. Neither customers were watching. One guy pulled out his phone. A woman quietly lured her child away from the scene. Derek glanced at Jallen, nervous. They're going to pull the footage that'll clear this up. Jallen just nodded once, but Chadwick wasn't finished. He walked over to the front desk, leaned in, and said 2 words that changed the whole temperature of the room. Call security. What would you do right now? Defend yourself or let Thiele collapse under its own weight? Because in that moment everyone was watching. That's him right there. Chadwick barked as the front door swung open. He's one. I told you about messing with the roles, acting sketchy. You better check him before he disappears. 2 uniformed officers stepped into the showroom, hands resting close to their belts. They weren't playing games. Or stopped. The showroom fell quiet. Jallen stood up slowly. No panic, no sudden movements. He just calmly placed his hands behind his back and looked at them in the eyes. The taller officer spoke first. Sir, we got a report of suspicious activity. We're going to need to ask you to step outside. Derek nearly jumped out of his seat. No, he's with me. He hasn't done anything. I've been helping him with financing this whole time. But Chadwick wasn't done. He stepped right in between the officers and pointed again. I saw him touching Thurl's Royce. He's been circling that Carol Day, like he was planning something. If you're waiting to see him steal a title, be too late. Mr. Rohr, the manager, stood awkwardly to the side, saying nothing. The officers took a step closer. The taller one said again, Sir, we're not going to argue here. Outside now. Jallen blinked slowly, took a breath, and just as he turned to move, a voice cut through the room from the far end. Hey, back off him. Heads turned. The crowd shifted. A man stepped out from the luxury wing blazer, no tie, tan slack-skin posture, clipboard in hand. Not security, not a cop, but every employee in the showroom immediately stood straighter when they saw him. Mr. Rohr's face changed, like he recognized him, and didn't know what to say. The man walked toward them casually, like he'd been watching the whole thing unfold. He looked at Jallen, then at the officers. You're about to detain the wrong man, said the taller cop. Frowned. And you are really? Man didn't answer right away. He reached into his blazer, pulled out a slim black leather folder, and handed over a document. The officer looked it over. His eyebrows rose. His posture shifted. He looked at Jallen, then back at the folder. Then the man said it clear, calm, and final. This man, Mr. Jallen Barnes, is the majority shareholder of this entire dealership group. And today he's sure to observe, not shop. You could feel the oxygen leave the room. Chadwick loud nervously. Wait, what? Derek dropped the pen in his hand. Mr. Work's face turned red, eyes darting everywhere. Jallen didn't say a word. He just looked at Chadwick. For a long still moment. Yo came at me loud throughout lies. Call the cops on me all because I looked at a car. You didn't think I should look at? Chadwick stumbled. I didn't know. Jallen cut in. You didn't know, but you acted like you did. The officer who had almost cuffed him, lowered his head slightly. The man with the clipboard turned to Mr. Rohr. You and I will talk later in private. Then he turned back to Jallen. Sir, you want us to have this man escorted out? Jallen looked Chadwick up and down. Nah, need he? Said he just escorted himself out. Have you ever watched someone throw power around only to find out they picked the wrong target? What would ya have done if you were? Jallen. Chadwick stood there, red-faced, sweating under all that designer confidence. It was quiet, no, the kind of quiet that makes every breath feel heavier. He looked at Jallen at the doors, then finally down at floor, because the moment had hit him and didn't just lose control of the room, never had it. Jallen didn't move, did it glowed, but he made eye contact with the man who moments ago tried to have him thrown out. You wanted me to feel small, to second guesses myself, to shrink when you raised your voice, but see, I've been shrinking for people like you my whole life, not anymore. Chadwick opened his mouth, maybe to defend himself, but nothing came out. Just then the executive stepped forward and nodded to security. Escort him out, he said flatly. Flag his ID. He's permanently banned from every Sterling Auto House location nationwide. The entire room watched as Chadwick was walked out past same velvet ropes he once stood beside. Like a gatekeeper, now they were remainder of the world he thought he owned until it turned its back on him. Simeon in the corner whispered, "That's what privilege looks like when it breaks." Shave, you ever seen someone trip over their own ego and fall face first into the truth? Jallen didn't say another word to Chadwick. There was nothing left to say, but then his gaze turned toward Mr. Rohr, the manager. The man had gone pale. His eyes darted. He looked like someone beginning to disappear into the tiles beneath his feet. You know what Makasai worse than him? Jallen asked. Mr. Rohr flinched. He lied to feel powerful, but you knew it was wrong and you went along with it anyway. The room stayed quiet. All you had to do was ask a question. You didn't. All you had to do was stand up. You didn't. Mr. Rohr swallowed. Heard. The executive spoke from behind Jallen. Voice cool. Your suspension is effective immediately. We'll review termination paperwork within 24 hours. Leave your badge at the desks. Mr. Rohr didn't fight it. I know, he said softly. Hedges slowly took the pin from his shirt, set it down and walked away. No eye contact, no words, just silence and regret. Jallen turned back toward Derek, who looked like he hadn't breathed in minutes. You tried, Jallen said. That matters. Derek blinked. I didn't do now. Jallen nodded. Next time do more, not just for someone like me, for Onion who's alone in the room. Dara nodded hard. The executive stepped beside Jallen again. If you're ready, sir, we can walk you through the final documentation stairs. Jallen didn't answer right away. He turned, looked over the cars. The showroom, the people who watched it unfold. Then he said, I came here to buy a car, but I left with the truth. This place didn't need a new fleet, it need data. Reckoning. The next morning the headline didn't mention a sale, it mentioned a shift black. Investor profile. The dealership reveals has secretly owns the brand. The clip went viral, but it wasn't loud, it wasn't violent. It was quiet, just a man falsely liacust, calmly saying, you think I don't belong here? I own the floor you were standing on. And just like that, the world flipped in a world where appearances often speak louder than truth. Jallen didn't shout, he didn't fight, he let the truth speak for itself, and it echoed through every corner off that showroom. If you've ever been understated or judged before someone even knew your name, this story is for you. Drop your thoughts in the comment, share where you're watching from, and don't forget to subscribe to Stories Abode, where real stories remind us what really matters.